Oh, for God's sake, what are you doing to me? Did you have that lined up for a different pundit other than me? Maybe that's what the Lancashire Telegraph will argue they've been done. They're not going to be banned for life, surely. Sorry, this is the nonsense I get given. It's okay to fire a manager if you've picked the wrong manager, but the problem with the is there's this reputation of it's like a circus and just fire anybody at any point.
Birmingham City, they're a little bit overrated this season. Hello guys, welcome back to The Sportsman Untitled. We've got a cracking weekend of Championship action to review. We're going to look at the Invincibles so far in Coventry and Middlesbrough, and I'm going to be joined by Benjamin Bloom, my guest for today. Just me and you today, Ben, but I think there's only one place to start really. Birmingham City, hammered away at Coventry 3-0. Are they a little bit overrated this season?
Overrated. I struggle with the whole premise of overrated. In the truest sense of the word, yes, because we got so excited during the summer, didn't we? But maybe we got a little overexcited. You know what it's like when there's no football happening and Birmingham are tearing it up in the transfer window. So, in the truest sense of the word, yes, but there's obviously a lot of nuance to where they've been, where they are right now and where they're probably going to be going. But I don't know. There definitely seems to be some chinks in the plan and how it's working right now, particularly as it pertains to chance creation. And I don't know. I thought that was all done with the game against Swansea. I know they won late, but they made loads of chances. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, this is all right now. Birmingham have clicked in front of goal. But then against Coventry, it looked like the same thing. But then we can throw in the big mitigating factor of the red card or the second yellow for Jack Robinson on 42. What I will say, Simon, is what worked last year isn't exactly working now in terms of methodical control of games and always managing to get the job done. But as we'll maybe discuss about Ipswich and about Southampton as well, there's a lot of new players gone in there that, you can't just take last year's 111-point pattern of play and assume that all the new players are going to get it straight away.
And as I mentioned, we are going to talk about Coventry later on, but we'll focus on Birmingham for now. One goal in their last 5, and it was that Dykes header. I just feel no shots on target again. It doesn't seem like Chris Davies knows his best team, which I think is apparent when you look at his team selection. You look at some of the players on the bench. I know that Dausch got injured in the warm-up at the CBS.
That doesn't help with your tactics, does it?
It doesn't help with your tactics, but I think there were a few eyebrows raised when he put Dykes in the team and played him for so long.
What, not Kyogo?
Kyogo, yeah. Okay. It just feels like a little bit, maybe he wanted a bit more of a physical striker, which makes sense, but there was clearly in the second half, and they were down to 10 men, it didn't feel like they had anything. It felt like they were camped in their own half and they couldn't get out and they didn't land a blow. No shots on target again. I know going down to 10 men is very difficult.
And Coventry are good as well.
And Coventry are good, and we'll come on to that later, we will. But Birmingham didn't do anything. They didn't offer anything. And I feel like when you've spent the amount of money they've spent, when you've got the amount of squad depth that they have, we're talking about Tommy Doyle barely getting a minute on the pitch, came on off the bench. Kyogo again left as a bench. Options out wide in Damari Gray and Kumas. I just feel like he doesn't know right now. There's almost too many cooks in the kitchen, almost, because he can change it whenever he wants. Would you agree with that?
I would, but not just on the basis of this game. I think we've got to give them the pass because it's Coventry away. Coventry are, as you've said, we'll come on to in the next segment, and the red card. But you can then argue back that there's a repeating pattern here of not making chances. And even in the game against Oxford, they won that 1-0. I think they had one shot on target in that game. And I mean, there seemed to be a clear idea before the red card to switch the ball to Kumas because Van Evik's always so far up in that direction. But Stansfield and Gray are good players. And Kyogo, particularly in that first game against Ipswich, I was at that game, really is a handful for defenders, even playing a 1-up against 2. So, yeah, sometimes you can get confused though. It's not always necessarily the forward players at fault in these situations. Sometimes it's playing right through the pitch and something's not knitting together quite there. But we said this a lot of times, Simon. In League One, it didn't blow teams away. They controlled games and got the job done. And sometimes an Alfie May, a fox in the box coming off the bench, got them over the line. I don't know your view. I think it'll come good, but it's just the process of the players learning the pattern of play, and maybe a bit of Chris Davies learning the division. And we're seeing in the Premier League as well, particularly, the real dogmatic philosophy manager. It feels a bit less now, and there's a lot of managers who are becoming a bit more pragmatic and a bit more happy to flip the switch on a different system.
Yeah, I think what I think about Ipswich and Southampton in some sense is that the squad depth issues that might be causing them problems now, when we get to the 3 game weeks and the winter period in the December, that will really help them out. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I just have a slight concern in the back of my head that Chris Davies, despite all the work he's done, we're now 3 defeats out of 4. I think they've got Sheffield Wednesday and midweek. Obviously, they should be winning that game. If they don't win that game and maybe they lose again at the weekend, it's that second international break. I hope the Birmingham board don't panic if they're in the bottom half of the table, because I think he's a good manager and I think he's got what it takes to get them in the playoff picture. But there is that thought that they've spent a lot of money, they've got a big squad, and it's full of quality players that are underperforming right now. And I just worry that they could pull the trigger.
I don't see that happening. I think he's
hope not.
I think he's going to be okay. And the other thing I'd throw into that conversation is, and it's a theme of this division this year, it's open, isn't it? It's there. And even if you're Birmingham and the expectation is here, and you're kind of here, you still feel that they're probably not going to be far off a little win streak. And whether it'll be low points for the playoffs this season like it was last season, or maybe the different looking table of a bigger clutch of teams for the playoffs. So I don't know, I think there'll be a lot of patience with Chris Davies, and obviously you earn that with the incredible actions last season as well.
We haven't said 111 points yet.
I did earlier, actually.
Did you?
I did, yeah. I snuck one in there, yeah.
Talking of 2 wins in a row, it's kind of a rarity in the Championship, it seems, this season. It can fire you up the table, as Charlton have proved, as they hammered Blackburn 3-0 at home. I think it should have been more. Nathan Jones sneaking a team up to the edge of the playoffs here. Very, very impressive from Charlton so far this season, Ben. Yeah,
and if we look back to the preview stuff, you guys were all having Charlton about here in the table, and I was like, I'm going to calm down a little bit. I think if they just stabilise somewhere in that third quartile, they'll be good. But when you say those words, Nathan Jones pushing a team up towards the playoff picture, why would we be surprised by that? And let's be fair, look at it financially and club size wise, and big fan of Luton and what they did, but Charlton are, even just look at the size of Luton Stadium in terms of the potential of pulling punters in the door and the spend for Charlton. And we're actually starting to see that off the bench as well. The way he's been able to use Alafe, who was fairly expensive from Stockport, he's been dripped in. I know Nathan Jones seems to be saying in like every single press conference now, I know I keep going back to Luton for players, but he said James Bree is a Nathan Jones player, not a Luton player, and he's a Premier League player, and has been signed by Aston Villa and Southampton before. So it's very impressive, and we shouldn't really be surprised. And it's very easy to say after he's been promoted that Nathan Jones was a Championship level manager who dropped down to League One, but that very much looks the case now, doesn't it?
It seems like a really good fit of manager and team, and we said this last season when they were in League One, but they're just doing really, really well right now. I agree with you about the attacking options as well. I think they spent, was it 10 to 12 million over the summer? Obviously, Kelman came in, Aleppo, who I can't pronounce for love nor money, but he's been pushing for a start as well. And obviously, we saw the Carey wonder goal at the weekend as well. So really, really good stuff from Charlton. We'll be keeping an eye on them moving forward. But it's been a really bad week for Blackburn on the other end of that, hasn't it? This heavy defeat. They were getting the sympathy, weren't they, from the wider punter after the Ipswich postponement when they were ahead. And then, of course, the Lancashire Telegraph have been banned as well from the club. It's looking really negative right now at Ewood Park, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, and look, I've been accused of not being able to talk about this postponement, abandonment objectively, obviously, as an Ipswich Town fan. I agreed with the decision. Whether you think that's, me being biased or not, that's up to you. Look, if I'm Blackburn in that situation, of course everyone's going to do it. You're going to try and push for the best solution. Whether they've tried to evoke sympathy or not, is open to interpretation. And they've had a lot of voices kind of behind them in terms of that they were wronged. I've said many times there's a difference between unlucky and unfair, and I think Blackburn were very unlucky, but Mother Nature, rain and unplayable pitches. Obviously then the journalist, and you're saying the whole organisation.
Yeah, I believe it's Elliot Jackson, the journalist himself, but I think they've now banned the whole Lancashire Telegraph, anyone from there from attending. So I think there's an issue there in terms of the wider picture. I think they've actually said they've been banned for life. So there's the wider picture there of a club in turmoil, trying to control a narrative when I don't think the reporting has been particularly unfair. Obviously, there's quite a lot to criticise at Blackburn Rovers, especially behind the scenes, especially in the transfer market. Dom Holmes sold on deadline day and not replaced. The squad needs improving if they're going to try and stay up in the league this season. I think it's that issue, and it's happened at my club Coventry before. CETA were in charge and banned the Coventry Telegraph because they were trying to do a protest to get them out of the club, etc., etc. It's just a sign of a big grey cloud over the club, and we've said that about the ownership at Blackburn for a while. I think relegation's a serious concern now for Rovers this season. What about you, Ben?
We're in a quite sort of detailed conversation about media sort of generally now, and we've seen Russell Martin essentially being questioned by what is described as fan media, but what is a journalist? Often a fan with a qualification and a job at a mainstream publication, and obviously I'm going to defend the likes of myself in this situation where you're starting to get access, and then there's always that tension of, right, is it your job to hold the club to account and really, report in a highly journalistic way? And maybe that's what the Lancashire Telegraph will argue they've been done. And they're not going to be banned for life, surely. They're going to be back. That's going to be rescinded at some point. These things always tend to work themselves out. But it's difficult, the battle between access and telling the truth and saying the right things. And I know things to do with the Lewis Travis transfer, where maybe Lewis had engineered his way out of Blackburn, were reported. It's such a tricky thing. I think in the world and online, we're having a big moment for freedom of speech at the moment. And yes, a football club is an organisation that can do what they like with their press conference and who they choose to invite in. But I do feel at the moment I'm probably siding with the publication in terms of, what they've said. Is that proportionate to a lifetime ban? I don't know. Is there a bit of deflection going on? I don't know. What we do know is if you go and lose 3-0 at the weekend, at the start of a 3-game week, whatever you've done looks bad. So, need to respond in the remaining 2 games of this week, don't they?
Yeah, and a Blackburn fan I was speaking to said it was the worst performance under Valérien Ismaël so far, which is obviously a big concern. From one championship club with, slightly questionable owners in terms of the fans' perspective, to another in Watford. Now, they got a 2-1 win this weekend against Hull, came from a goal down. By the way, what a goal from Ollie McBurney that was. Lovely flowing move.
He's in fine form, isn't he?
He is absolutely flying this season. But Watford came back to win that game. Unfortunately, the headlines have been taken by the manager because Watford decided to post a video of Paolo Pezzolano post-match giving what can only be described as a slightly strange team talk, and they've decided to publish this of him trying to inspire the players. It seems like he's telling them off. He says he's not here to make friends, and they don't look all that inspired. I think there were reports of home fans singing "Sacked in the Morning" as well.
That definitely happened.
When they were 1-0 down. International break number 2's coming up. I'd be looking at Watford for another managerial sacking sometime soon, Ben.
Yeah, I watched them on the Monday night. They played Millwall, and I don't want to be old man shouts at clouds with modern football, but I saw a lot of neat and tidy, knocking the ball about here and there, and not a lot of penetration or final third action, if you know what I mean. It does feel like when you've got a situation where, and let's be fair, the Watford fans, I feel a bit sorry for the Watford fans, because whether a manager is fairly or unfairly, it's okay to fire a manager if you've picked the wrong manager. But the problem with the Potsos is there's this reputation of it's like a circus and just fire anybody at any point. And
there's also the cleverly point to be made, the circumstances and the unpopularity of that decision, whether it was right or wrong with their form at the back end of last season. But the fans were really connected to the former manager, really didn't want him to leave, and now the new guy's gone in and is underperforming. So it makes it more difficult. Yeah,
and it's difficult in terms of underperformance. Yeah, probably you'd expect him to be somewhere in the middle with the squad. Although they'd have an all right transfer window in the end, wasn't it? But you just get this sense sometimes with fan bases where you're like, that guy's done. If he wins 6 on the trot and then loses 2 after that, they'll turn again. And it feels like a big lack of trust in Pet Solano. It's difficult with these social media things because almost like everything feels out of context on social media because they're such short little clips. But maybe that's gone the wrong way they expected it to. Well, we're backing our manager here, and here he is giving a rousing Churchillian speak in the Watford dressing room, and it's not the way it came across, did it? But would I be surprised, Simon, if you were correct and we saw another bit of Potso P45 in the international break? No, but hey, maybe they're stubborn enough now that when everyone thinks they're going to do it, they're not going to do it.
Absolutely. They've got Portsmouth away and Oxford at home, their next 2 fixtures before the break. So there's points on offer there, you would think, with the way those two are playing right now. We have to quickly touch upon Sheffield United. They've won a game of football, Ben. It's an absolute miracle, isn't it?
Scored a goal as well, didn't they? And Chris Wilder was I know Chris Wilder, of all the managers in the Championship, is one of the best with his managing of the narrative, and he's very good at how to say this in a not inflammatory way, but he's very good at getting his way of thinking across to the wider public and the fan base, and that's a skill in itself. But I agreed with him. Maybe I'm eating it up as well when he said, look, this isn't something that's going to immediately just turn after such a poor start and what happened in the summer. And I think they just had to go to Oxford and just do a job, win a game. If it's 1-0 and you nicked a goal in the second half and there wasn't much in the game, fine, whatever. The W's on the board now. The losing streak is over. And look, I mean, we're probably 5 weeks behind us saying every single week, Sheffield United, they'll come good next week. And now it does appear to be happening. I think that Southampton, it's a real fascinating one in midweek now, because you'd now say things have turned maybe at Sheffield United and they're on a downtrend with a lot of travel for Southampton. So not surprised he's got the win, not surprised he's framed it in that way, and won't be surprised if Sheffield United are 3 and then 5 and then 7 and then 9 places harder than they are now.
Absolutely, and we'll come back to you for your Southampton-Sheffield United prediction later on in the show. Really happy to see Callum O'Hare score, by the way. Lovely finish. He gets a bit of criticism and front a goal sometimes.
Did the ball look like it went out before? I haven't seen a conclusive...
Yeah, it's one of them, isn't it? It was close.
But there you go. Nice finish, though.
Yeah, lovely finish indeed. One thing we need to touch upon is last week we were talking about Wrexham in detail. You weren't on the show, Ben, but I'm going to get blamed for it.
Yeah,
right? Absolutely. Basically, Callum and Connor mainly, it definitely wasn't me, was saying that Phil Parkinson probably might go before Christmas, and the Wrexham fans in the comment, rightly so, were saying, no, the board are going to stick with him, it's going to be fine, 3 promotions in a row can't be ignored. Where do you stand on Park? It was a draw again this weekend. I mean, every other team in the Championship drew this weekend, it appeared, didn't it? But he's not got off and running at home in the Championship so far. A couple of good away wins, though.
I can sit on the fence here. I can see both sides of the argument. I can see why people went into the season saying, right, this is the Championship now. It's not Wrexham having a giant budget in League One and going through, incredible achievement to go back to back to back. But this is a different level now, and I think people looked a little bit at Phil's football with the 3 at the back, get crosses in the box, and is it going to need something more sophisticated? I don't think that's the case, to be honest, because now I'm looking at a Wrexham side. Cabore's playing brilliant at wing-back, and the wing-backs are so important in a 3-5-2 where you're going to be having a lot of crosses. And so are the central midfielders. And Lewis O'Brien is playing brilliantly. And, you know, maybe his job was different, say, under a Carlos Corberan at Huddersfield. I think now his job is, right, break it up, get in the box, score some goals. And Broadhead's back. Kiefer Moore's good at this level. Dom Hyam, you already mentioned, is in there. We felt maybe after the roasting of poor old Connor Cody in the game against QPR that change was going to be made. So you can see it turning. I can see why the Wrexham fans would be defending Phil Parkinson. I can see why outside fans and pundits would think, ooh, what's the standard here? What's the expectation? Where's he going to be if he's not making it? Could that lead to a sacking? I think it's a fairly safe seat, to use a kind of political analogy. And I think there is a lot of credit in the bank there for Phil Parkinson. So I think he's fairly safe. But if we're Wrexham in the table at the moment, they're up in 15th. They are trending upwards, Simon, as well. It's been a couple. They could beat Derby as well, couldn't they? But they got They got Eustace at the end of the game, didn't they? Where you think, oh, how have they come away with something? But they're good at that, Derby, and Eustace's sides have been good at that. So, yeah, I go on. Let's be bold. I think he's passing Christmas for sure.
Yeah,
and I think he'll last the season, don't you?
Yeah,
you're not committing on that.
I won't join you with lasting the season, but I think he'll get a decent amount of time. It was quite difficult to judge this one because Wrexham have been really poor defensively in terms of conceding chances this season. I think the change of Dom Hyam does improve them in that sense. But they were coming up against a Derby side that has also been kind of toothless in terms of creating chances in the last few weeks. I look at their next 2 fixtures, which are Leicester and Birmingham, and you just think, could that be 2 defeats on the spin and the narrative changes? I don't think he'll get sacked anytime soon, not at all, but I just think there's still some underlying concerns. If they keep conceding as many chances as they have been, they're not going to be that successful this season. It's as simple as that for me, I think.
Yeah, that could tighten up though.
It could. They've got enough options as well, haven't they?
Yeah. That you're right to point out. That's a tricky week, isn't it? And I think they'll both be quite attritional games. With the way we've seen Cifuentes setting Leicester up has not been typical parachute. I've got better players than you. I'm going to attack you. It's been quite European cup football-y type thing. And we already mentioned Birmingham. There could be the own pressure on them. And there's this kind of fun rivalry. Even though Birmingham Wrexham fans don't like being bucketed together, you can see why we do it. And that's been a good rivalry. And that'll be an interesting game on Friday night.
You can see why Sky Sports have picked that as their main game on Friday night.
Mate, their US audience will be burgeoning for that one as well.
I think Tom Brady might make the trip over for that one as well. Right, it's time to move on to our next segment and talk about the 2 Invincibles. I'm very excited to talk about these 2 teams.
Why is that, Simon?
Because I just love Middlesbrough and Rob Edwards and the work he's been doing. We will start with Boro, actually, because got a very good point, I think, away at Southampton, who have incrementally improved, I think, over recent weeks. It's very slow progress for them, but I've been really, really impressed with them so far. How can't you be? Top of the league, 5 wins, 2 draws so far, and Cali Sen with a lovely finish. They've got so many options is what I was looking at. The subs they bought on, Ben, I think they've got the depth to really sustain this promotion push. I mean, Hackney and Morris in the middle, both very, very impressive. The subs they bought on, Delano Bergzorg, who I'm hit and miss about, to be honest. He can be great one week and anonymous the next. Alan Brown, Sven Alpalm, Cali Sen and Sonsi Hansen all came off the bench. So that's incredible squad depth. I think they can keep up this promotion push.
Well, they're having an impact as well, the players off the bench. Sene has scored in the previous 2 games as well. What I'll say about Middlesbrough, and you can interpret this positively or negatively depending on your outlook, is it feels like they're in a moment right now where everything's kind of coming up roses. They look very efficient, they look very solid, but I've watched a couple of their games recently, and like you say, the subs are all having an impact, and you can argue, well, good management, good recruitment. It feels like I watched the game against West Brom, and it felt like scored in the first half, then West Brom came strong, up the other end, scored, popped the balloon. And again, you can argue that both ways, good game management or always everything coming up roses and they're in the good moments. So that then goes one of two ways. They're either, going to keep up that kind of, sort of trajectory and become a winning machine, and they're not just coming up roses. They're well managed and they're well balanced, and like you mentioned, they've got good options, very good central midfield pairing, which everyone seems to be sort of purring about, don't they? So it's been a great start. They've got the momentum. Are they swashbuckling their way through the Championship, blowing everyone away? No. Are you going to need to do that this season, though?
That was the point I was going to come on to. There's not that 100-point team
Can
this
you
season.
win the title by being efficient, using your subs well, being good at home, staying clear of injuries, playing the box as well? Probably.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about Boro right now. I mean, I look at the way they're playing and the players they have, because they do have that individual quality. I think that's where we're talking about them maybe not dominating games, but in those key moments, they actually are scoring the goals and taking the chances.
But they're kind of controlling games in their own way, aren't they? Yeah. By being very steady, very solid. And we pointed out that behind this, kind of elite-looking, highly saleable, highly valued central midfield pair, there's a lot of Britton, Target, Jones, Edmondson, Ayling. There's then a lot of solidity and experience as well. And we forget that Handsome Rob has been the distance before, and he's been the distance with a team that were kind of sturdy and solid without being spectacular, and were good at home and were good on set pieces. So, I mean, they're unbeaten and they're like 2.4 points per game. And I'll give my margin of error speech as well. If that goes on a few more games, you can be all right for the entire rest of the season. You're in the playoffs. Yeah, if you're above average, Simon, you're in the top four.
I wouldn't know anything about being above average, Ben, I'm afraid. I think that's the point, though. If they continue this points tally and then you go down for their average points of what they actually need to make it, it becomes more than achievable. I think the other point to make on them is the back three we saw work so well for Rob Edwards at Luton. Very familiar with that system. Also at Forest Green as well, it's probably worth noting. But also Adi Vivash behind the scenes, the back three he implemented at Coventry defensively. Some of the defensive performances we saw from him and Mark Robbins away at Middlesbrough, for example, in the playoffs, that back three, Luke Ayling, experience, you've touched on the experience they have, really hard to beat. And I think that's what we've seen so far. So very, very impressed with Boro.
Simon, if you accept the premise, which you may or may not this season, that you're kind of always in a battle with the parachute teams. It's like a lot of people say if you finish above 75% of the four parachute teams, you're probably going to be in the top two, because the one place above you will probably be one of them. But if you look at the gaps at the moment, they're 10 points ahead of Southampton, 8 points ahead of Ipswich. Ipswich obviously have a game in hand, and miles ahead of Sheffield United, 14 points ahead. And
Leicester's potential points deduction we have to mention as well.
Yeah. So there could be that as well. So if you accept that premise and it's a battle, can you give yourself enough margin for error before the likelihood is those teams put some whacking winning runs on the board? All looking good, isn't it? For all the comments that say, it's too early. Well, sometimes you can really make a statement in this point in the season. And we've mentioned the examples, the likes of West Brom under Bilic and Bournemouth under Parker, front-loaded their points totals. Go and look it up. Scored vast majority of their points rounds 1 to 23 and just kind of rode the downhill slope into promotion and automatic promotion as well.
Absolutely, and I understand the point that it might be too early to talk about this, but they're invincible 7 games into the season.
It's never too early to talk about anything in our land.
Well, we're not 3 games in is the point I was going to make, are we? We're actually quite a decent chunk into the season. We've seen enough to know that Boro are very efficient, very good side, very tough to beat. Go on then, let's talk about Coventry, because also invincible. Why
not, Simon? You're here, mate. Well, you're here.
3 wins, 4 draws so far for Frank Lampard's team. Top of the XG table, 1.98 created per 90. Their XG difference, which is the difference between XG created and XG conceded, is 0.9 per game in the positive. The next highest, for example, is Ipswich, 0.61 per game, which is maybe interesting as we move further forward into the season. It's all about the attack, though, isn't it, Ben, at the moment? 18 goals scored, the most in the EFL. Victor Torp and Hadji Wright both on 5 goals apiece, top scorers in the Championship, along with Josh Sargent. It's very exciting. It's very good. I'm feeling very positive. How are you feeling about Cov?
Yeah, and is it all about the attack, or is this just a well-balanced team? And what manifests itself in a well-balanced team is the 7 and the 5 maybe pads the numbers a bit, but good team that's had several positive transfer windows, that's been winning football matches. When did Lampard come in? Like November?
November, yeah, last year.
Been basically a playoff team or a top 4 team for that period. We're 9, 10, 11 months on from there. Very consistent, got a much more solid pattern of play than anyone else in the division. You could have flagged Birmingham, but then they've changed so many players at Birmingham that, maybe that's mitigated there. Could have had more points, as you mentioned already. So extremely positive. The thing we want to know about Frank in the dugout is big clutch games, head-to-heads. I know you can win promotion without winning those games, and we saw my lot Ipswich a few years ago didn't win games against the top 6. Won games against the entire rest of the division though, and got 96 points or whatever it was in the end. So yeah, hugely positive. And even though we're going to upset the Middlesbrough fans here, you've got Middlesbrough's points per game, and efficiency at the moment is greater than Coventry. You cannot ignore that. 2.4 points per game for Boro coming up to international break too. I don't know, Coventry almost look more viable just because the amount of chances they're making. So it's interesting to have that paradigm with the 2 teams up at the top at the moment, but I'm sure you're going to tell me you are. Well, I, a Coventry fan, I'd be pretty excited by this.
Very excited indeed. I think, interestingly, the home record since Lampard came in is genuinely unbelievable. In the league championship, excluding the playoffs, 1-13, drawn 4, lost 2. Now, those 2 defeats came against Leeds and against Burnley. 200 points from that season. Does
that kind of underline my point about the big opponents, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Although I think Leeds didn't get anywhere near Leeds. Probably should have got something against Burnley. Leeds were just far too good. I think the interesting thing there is we have this invincible tag for this section. We know no team's going to go invincible this season.
No,
or are they?
Not in a 46-game league, mate.
No, but invincible at home, I think, is a potential possibility for Coventry, especially this season. I think Burnley
didn't even concede any goals, did they?
So they probably did. But I think that's a really good basis to base a promotion around. Is not losing a game at home. It's very, very difficult. We see Birmingham come to the CBS, and we see other teams. Norwich completely changed their style when they came to us, which is a real kind of compliment to the way Coventry are playing, especially at home. The only concern I have is the squad depth, which they don't have in comparison to an Ipswich, to a Boro, even to a Sheffield United to some senses, potentially later in the season. Jack Rodoni and Mason Clark were both out of the win over Birmingham. A couple more injuries, and you're really, really looking at some young players or some players who just aren't at the level to compete at the top of the Championship. Would you have those same concerns potentially? You just need to get to January, really.
That's just the system we're in, isn't it? That if you've not got the parachute payments, and you can go through the subs that Ipswich bought on and have bought on in the last few games, and it's frightening for the opponents, Southampton and Leicester less so because of what we think might be a business plan in the background that we haven't quite had confirmed or heard about officially yet. I don't know. Sometimes we overcomplicate it. Yes, the parachute teams, especially with 3 sub windows, and you sometimes you look back at the match stats and you see how they've done it in the second half, and you're like, oh, that's hard to play against. But sometimes, have you got a really good 11 that's been winning for a long while? Yes, Coventry have. Have you got a manager that at this level, in season, outside of playoffs, has really delivered? Yes, he has. And, it'd be interesting. Can he go the next step if Coventry were to fall short of the top 2 and finish in the playoffs? That will be the question, having got so close with Derby and so close last season with Cov as well. We're gonna find out more. I do think the likes of Coventry and Middlesbrough though can make hay while the sun is shining. Can they get to 30, 32, 34 points at round 15 and make it so hard for Southampton and Ipswich, who started slowly, and Leicester, who might have some points taken off.
So my next question for you, going into the international break, Boro have got Stoke at home and Portsmouth away. Coventry have got Millwall away and Sheffield Wednesday away, 2 away games there. Who do you think stays undefeated the longest? Can you see either of them slipping up in this week?
I
tell you what, Stoke at home is a really interesting one for Boro, isn't it? Because Stoke have been going great guns as well.
They're efficient and they skew better maybe at home, and it could be just very tight, and maybe you might drop points, but you might not lose. It's difficult, Simon, because then you can also have the debate about unbeaten versus, just win games, and it doesn't matter if you lose the odd game. But
that's not the question, Ben.
No, it is not the question. I mean, look, that'd be so good to get to round 9 and international break 2, which then going to take you to the middle of October and you're undefeated, especially for Middlesbrough when it's literally a new manager's walked in there as well. Wouldn't be surprised if they both did it.
Perfect. That's a great answer. Yeah, and as I say, last season we saw Blackburn undefeated at this stage.
Really?
Under John Eustace, I believe.
So what, seven
it was 7 games in. 7 games in.
I didn't know that.
Blackburn were undefeated, 4 wins, 3 draws. Sheffield United were undefeated with the same record. Obviously, had slightly different seasons, but neither got promoted. So let's hope that isn't the case.
Quiz, yeah.
Let's hope that isn't the case for Middlesbrough and Cov this season. Little question of the week for you, Ben. I know you're going to know the answer. When was the last time Ipswich beat Norwich?
Oh, for God's sake, what are you doing to me? Did you have that lined up for a different pundit other than me? 2009, Simon.
And that brings me nicely on to our show on Friday. We're going to be previewing Ipswich
I'm going to
versus Norwich.
Bigfoot this. Do you realise for a lot of those seasons they haven't been in the same division? Someone let us know in the comments. I reckon for over half of those seasons, half the time Norwich were in the Premier League, Ipswich went down to League One, and we did have a couple of seasons where Norwich were in, or one where Norwich were in League One, Ipswich in Championship, in the Premier League, Norwich in the... But yeah, 2009 is a long time ago. Carry on, mate. Sorry.
If you want to see Ben Bloom make more excuses for Ipswich failing to beat Norwich, please do like and subscribe.
Producer's just telling me as well. You can look up all of this pain. He's going to have it on a nice sheet for me here as well. Dearie me.
But yeah, make sure you stay tuned for Friday's show where we will be doing a deep dive into Ipswich versus Norwich. Ben will be making more excuses and hoping for an Ipswich Town win.
Your excuses are my facts, Simon Lillibury.
My last little question for you here. Sorry, before we preview some of the midweek fixtures. Little fun question for you, Ben, if you don't mind. Which Championship player who you don't expect to get promoted this season is most likely to get a higher move next summer for you?
I just found it. Sorry, this is the nonsense I get given. That's the amount of games Ipswich haven't beaten Norwich.
It's quite a long list, that, isn't it, Ben?
Simon, I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, of course I can. Which Championship player who you don't expect to get promoted this season do you think is most likely to get a move to a higher level, potentially Premier League, potentially abroad this season?
Well, we've looked at Kieran, haven't we, at Watford, smashing in free kicks, and he came from Bundesliga, so that might not be Premier League, but he could go back, and we assume Watford possibly aren't going to get promoted. I tell you what I like, Simon, the guys putting the numbers on at Swansea, Vipotnik and Ronald, and they've both been there a while, and they're both like 23, 24, 25 as well. Everyone loves Brazilian, Spanish teams going bid for them as well. And Vipotnik looks decent. And come on, you bang 15 goals in the Championship, and you're worth double-digit millions straight away. So let's shout out the lads at Swansea, Vipotnik and Ronald.
Yeah, I didn't think much of Vipotnik, but he's really come on this season. I think he's really stepped up to the plate, and I like Swansea a lot. I really hope they can have a decent season. Maybe we shouldn't rule them out of promotion, Ben. Is that what
I think they could have had more points as well. You saw Alan Sheehan was pretty fed up at Millwall scoring a 45+1 set-piece goal when they dominated the first half. And I think Swansea, we've run the Nathan Jones post-match interview here, have been in games and not got what they've deserved in a few of them. So you look at Sheehan's record from when he comes in an open season. I don't think what you said is that ridiculous.
No, it certainly has been very, very impressive, given it's his first team job, isn't it? Stepping into that kind of arena. I'm going to pick out, you said Aaron Kunda, obviously quite a good pick there. I'm going to go for Richard Kone though as well. I think he's been so strong since stepping up. Why do you think
so many Championship teams higher up passed on him then?
I think it's very strange. I think it's very, very strange. What was he, 2.5 million and then doubling it in add-ons or something like that? I think that's a bargain price for a player who's a really good age for a progression. He had all the attributes to do so well. I think maybe what it was is the fact he dropped off in form towards the end of last season in League One for Wycombe. But there was the
for a manager who's since
Dodds,
been removed of his...
As I say, I don't think that was the great matchup in terms of a managerial selection, in terms of getting the best out of a striker like him. But I think he's got absolutely everything. I don't see why he can't go on and improve. I think he's going to score a lot of goals this season.
Do you think there's sporting directors watched a couple of games of him and gone, maybe that's one we should have had a look at, yeah?
I think there'll be a lot of head scratching at certain championship clubs, given he's now gone to QPR. But I'm excited about him, and I think if he gets off to a really good start in his first season at QPR, they won't want to lose him next summer.
Double figures goals?
Yeah. I think he should be getting 15, really. Yeah. 15 plus, hopefully. And then he's probably a £15 million player, isn't he?
Straight away, yeah.
So easy as
million
that.
A goal, right?
Yeah, that's how it works. And QPR will be very, very happy about his transfer fee. We've got a midweek round of fixtures, Ben. So we better get on with talking about some of these. We've got 3 games to preview now for you, starting on Tuesday. Sheffield United versus Southampton. You touched on it earlier on in the show, Ben. Sheffield United finally getting off the mark at Oxford. Southampton, very interestingly, second highest in XG created, which took me awfully by surprise. They're conceding quite a few chances as well. And I've thought that Finn Azaz and the like have been slightly struggling in front of goal in terms of creating chances. But they're actually doing okay. And we'll still, I'm sure, will be pointing at that XG table rather than the actual table, which shows Southampton, I think, 7 points out of 7 games so far.
The unfortunate thing for Will is everybody else is going to be looking at the real table, aren't they? I think it's worth pointing out, Simon, that there's been a hell of a lot of travel. And we've talked about the first 3-game week in the EFL. Southampton are going back-to-back 3-game weeks, and they had to go to Liverpool in midweek, which is kind of is it a nice day out for the Southampton fans after what happened in the Premier League last season? I don't know. So they've done a lot of travel. I don't want to overhype this. You can see Will in the press conferences. You're getting a bit scratchy. He's like, I'm working really hard here and it's not quite coming out like it's supposed to be. And then you have this really bad timing. I mean, look at when Ipswich played Sheffield United. Perfect timing. They were atrocious. And then the manager got sacked like 5 games into his gig. Now you're looking at it, they've turned it around and you're off to Bramall and it's difficult and you're not playing well. I can see a home win. Yeah,
Ruben Sellers, unfortunately for him, his teams were really, really easy to play against. And the one thing we know for certain about Chris Wilder's Sheffield United, especially at Bramall Lane, they're not going to be easy. No. Even if Southampton win this game, it's going to be really, really tough for them. How much can he keep pointing to the underlying data before the results have to change though, Ben?
Well, I mean, it's a year 1 parachute team and we have things called transfer windows in January, and we know that owners make decisions in this kind of period, and you and I will be here in November saying, right, here comes the graveyard. It's the November international break. I want to see managers given a chance. It's an innovative hire, it's a young English manager who's worked abroad, who talks a great game and who showed up brilliantly on Monday Night Football with Jamie Carragher, didn't he? You want it to work, but again, Simon, show me the league table, not the XG table. I believe in underlying metrics. I believe if you study them over a long period, they will tell you what's going to happen. But I also believe that there's an egg timer that turns over when a club gets relegated from the Premier League. If you're an owner of that club saying, get me back up there, else my turnover is going to half and then half again. So November.
We'll come to your score prediction then, Ben, actually, for Tuesday night, Sheffield United Southampton. What do you reckon?
Well, you're winding me back to last season where Sheffield United won lots of tight games at Bramall, didn't they? With Chris Wilder being kind of the key ingredient. So probably Sheffield United by 1. Let's go 1-0.
I'll go for a 1-1. And I don't know if that'll actually help Will still out that much. I think he really needs to start winning games rather than just drawing them. On Wednesday, we've got Millwall versus Coventry. Now, Millwall unbeaten in 3 now, 2 draws in a row. Alex Neil doing a reasonable job, as we always expect from Millwall. Cov, as we've talked about already on the show, unbeaten, really flying right now. Potentially should have a few more points. I see this one being a really, really tough test. Cov, by the way, already lost at Millwall this season in the Carabao Cup, 2-1. Obviously, a lot of changes were made to both sides there. So we'll wait and see. I think this is going to be a draw, Ben. What do you think?
I think Coventry might win, actually. I think right now, Millwall looked like they were going to play 4-4-2 and stick Coburn and Ivanovic up top and go for it, and it was going to be great. And it worked at Norwich, and Alex Neil was rightly saying, well, we sacrifice in midfield, but I've got these two lads up. So I think Ivanovic is injured anyway, but we saw it not working at Charlton, and then they took Ivanovic out the game and went to the kind of using the number 10 and solidifying that area of the pitch. So I think they're a little bit in transition. And as we said in the Coventry segment earlier in the show, Coventry are totally not in transition. They know what they're doing. They're ready to go. And we're saying it for the first time ever covering the Championship. Millwall skew better away at the moment, which we never say. So I think you could see an away win there.
Oh, maybe you've convinced me. No, I'm going to say a 1-1 draw again. I'm just going to go for a 1-1 draw. What are you saying, Ben?
I'll take Cov and both teams to score.
Lovely.
Go 2-1 Coventry.
Okay.
Sorry, Millwall fans.
Thank you, Ben, for being on the show and backing a Cov win. Last one we're going to cover, QPR versus Oxford. QPR, disappointingly, I think, when you have to say they're playing against Sheffield Wednesday, drew 1-1, didn't get the win, but 10 points from their last 4 since they lost 7-1 to Coventry. Wow. A remarkable turnaround. Oxford 1-0 loss to Sheffield United and couldn't follow up that win at Bristol City. Very difficult to judge what Gary Rowett's going to do at Oxford, but this is a really close match. I think Oxford will be targeting to try and pick up some points, really, Ben. How do you see it going?
Well, and you'd assume big away following, big atmosphere at Loftus, wouldn't you? There's a bit of a sense with Oxford that they had to just batten down the hatches with Gary last season, didn't they? And just head it, kick it, win 1-0 and try and do that. And now it changes a little bit, doesn't it? And they've got a couple of ball players in midfield, and the Belgian fella, De Kirschmacher, who I'm not going to be able to...
That was good.
Thanks, man. Are they trying to... We've had this so many times before, Simon, where it's like, should you even try and evolve? It's fine to have Gary Rowett and be Millwall and finish 10th in the league. If Oxford finish 10th, they'll be made up with that. But it feels like they're trying to move towards that. And they've been a bit strange this season. It was a great win at Bristol City. And I don't know, no one's played Bristol City that well this season other than Oxford. But I fancy QPR, I've got to say. And you mentioned King Kone as your one who could get to the Premier League without a promotion. Let's go for a silly one. Let's go for goals. 3-1.
Yeah, I think QPR will win this as well. And that will mark an amazing run, wouldn't it, for Julian Stefan since that big defeat.
I'll go for quite a good front four with Saito and Dembele and Vale and Kone. You know,
we said it on paper when they signed all these players as well, and we thought maybe they could put something good out. They're quite an exciting team, and I think they will beat Oxford on Wednesday. Now, I know we've covered a couple of the games, Ben, but we're going to do a little fourfold and get you to predict each of Wednesday's fixtures, because there are only 4 on Wednesday. Millwall, Coventry, Norwich, West Brom, Portsmouth, Watford and QPR, Oxford. So we've already done Millwall, Cov and QPR, Oxford. You're going for a Cov win and a QPR win. What about Norwich, West Brom and Portsmouth, Watford, please?
Oh, do you want to take one of these? I've watched West Brom a couple of times. Norwich, are they going to be distracted by the Old Farm derby at the weekend as well? West Brom feel like they're getting 8/10 of it right, but the 2/10 they're not getting right is the penalty boxes, and the most... West Brom are like the inverse Middlesbrough, aren't they, if you know you know what I mean. I could see that being a 1-1er, Norwich, West Brom, so I'll take the draw. Do you want to take Pompey, Watford? I'll leave you the nasty one.
That's really difficult, isn't it? Because... although Watford won last time out, I'm not convinced by them at all.
Pompey, by the way, at Ipswich had no Murphy. Chaplin, okay, he was embargoed, so he'll be back. No Schmidt, the keeper. No Shaughnessy, and Lang has been out a long time, although Pack did come back. So
they conceded quite a few
chances.
chances.
Might be a good time to play Pompey.
Yeah. But I don't trust Watford, so I'm going to have to go for a draw. I'm going to have to go for a 1-1 draw as well, which means we're really on the fence for Wednesday's fixtures. But that's just how it goes sometimes. Thanks very much, Ben, for joining me on Friday. Don't forget, we're going to do an Ipswich versus Norwich preview. The Old Farm derby coming your way on Sunday. Really can't wait for that one. But Ben, thanks very much for joining me, as I've already said. Make sure you like and subscribe. Get your thoughts in. Who is going to stay unbeaten the longest, Coventry or Middlesbrough? Are Birmingham really in crisis, or can they turn things around? But that's all, and we'll see you on Friday.